The topic that you've given me is the next steps in the Pan-African movement, the next steps. Mm-hmm. But before we make those steps, we have to sankofa a little bit. That is, retrieve the past a little bit. Mm-hmm. It is important that we look back with such consciousness to help us to understand the future in the present. Mm-hmm. The issue of liberation in Africa is our responsibility. And when I say our responsibility, what I mean is all people of African descent. Be you born in the Caribbean, in the Pacific, in Europe, wherever, as Peter Tosh said, so far as you are black, you are an African. Mm-hmm. So we go back to look at what happened way back with Sylvester Williams, with Marcus Garvey, and all of them fighting for the emancipation of black people all over the world, and for them to consider and see Africa is their home, so they have to take Africa back from the European colonization. And they came together through Pan-African congresses. So it was not only Africans born in the continent, but the whole thing was driven by Africans born in the diaspora, in the US, in the Caribbean, in Europe. So you have people like George Padmore, CLR James, McCannon, and others. And they came together. And they noticed that we were having conferences and talking and conferences and talking. And the 1884-85 Berlin Conference partitioning of Africa still remains. Africa remains in the hands of the European powers. So unless we had a territory liberated and use that territory to liberate as a springboard to liberate the rest of Africa, our Pan-Africanism is meaningless. So the Pan-Africanism that they were holding conferences was meaningless unless it was linked up with the total liberation and unification of Africa. They had to secure a land base. So they met in London and consolidated that thinking and that thought. And initially, they decided on Sierra Leone because of the peculiar nature of the settlement. Then a propitious letter came from Ghana inviting Nkrumah to be the secretary of a new movement that was seeking to kick out the British. Then CLR James Padmore, he showed the letter to CLR James and George Padmore, and then they met and discussed this and told him that first they had asked Wallace Johnson from Sierra Leone to go to Sierra Leone, though they called Wallace and said that no, the plot has changed. We're going to the Gold Coast, and Nkrumah is being prepared to go. Nkrumah resisted. He said he wanted to complete his doctorate degree, but CLR James and George Padmore put their feet down and said, no, you are going. So they prepared him, and in December 47, they took him to Liverpool into a ship, and then he landed in Ghana. So between 1947 and 1957, 10 years, Nkrumah mobilized the people of the Gold Coast at that time to kick out the British, so that by 1957, Ghana negotiated an independent settlement with the British. That is the Gold Coast, Nkrumah, and the Convention People's Party. And they took over Gold Coast and named it Ghana after the ancient city of Ghana. And the movement between 1947 and 1957 to secure a land base, nothing like that has happened anywhere in the world. That you think that one person was instructed with a program and he came and managed to mobilize Ghanaians, that is the African people of the Gold Coast, into a formidable force to bring the British imperial power to its knees through a system of non-violent resistance, boycotts of European goods, and all that. So when the economy of the British was touched, the British had to seek a negotiated settlement. The British had just come out of the war. They were facing serious economic difficulties, so they depended very much on the wealth of Malaysia, of India, and of Ghana to support their lifestyles and value systems. So it was something that, because of the boycotts of the European goods, particularly British goods, that affected them. So they had to settle. And Ghana gained its independence in 1957, 6 March. And, on the eve of independence, Nkrumah asserted that the independence of Ghana is meaningless unless it is linked up with the total liberation of the African continent, continuing the same theme that Padmore, Garvey, CLR James and others have been propounding. And it makes sense. Unity is everything. They met in 1884 and 85 and divided Africa among themselves. Europeans, countries, the US and Turkey. So they divided us. So our responsibility is to unite us in order to be a formidable force. You have the United States of America, you have the European Union and all that. So unity is desirable. So Ghana became a territory that became a Pan-African territory. Brothers and sisters from the diaspora poured into Ghana to come and help secure Ghana. That's what happened. So what is Ghana is yours. You in the diaspora, your ancestors, your great-grandfathers, they contributed to make what Ghana is today or was under Nkrumah. So you have a sense of spiritual and material ownership of Ghana and the whole essence of liberation and the cause of African unity. It is yours. It is your responsibility. And you should never lose this fact, especially those of us in the diaspora. This is very, very important. Very, very, very crucial. Because without the skills, intellect, and force of people like Marcus Garvey, George Padmore, CLR James, and others, our sister was saying, will still have been in physical chains. They have done well. And they did that in that consciousness that the Africans first and foremost. The Africans first and foremost. And it is that feeling of that consciousness that is required and needed today. So it was with that sense of consciousness that they worked very hard. George Padmore worked very hard, he was in Accra, sending missions to East Africa and Southern Africa to see to the liberation of these territories. They worked very hard. So, but unfortunately, Padmore died in 1959, but Nkrumah carried on. So by 1963, countries gathered in Addis Ababa as independent African countries, including Liberia and Ethiopia. So they became 32 countries, and they formed the Organization of African Unity. And that means between 1957 and 1963, there were 8 African countries at the time when Ghana gained its independence, then added 24 countries, or 22 countries rather, to make it 32. And this has not happened anywhere between 1957 and 1963. And this is as a result of the securing of the Gold Coast as a platform to launch the liberation of the rest of Africa. And this was done by the people, the African people of Ghana, of Gold Coast. And it was not only the Ghanaians, no, please. It was people from the diaspora, from the Caribbean, for UK, US, and all. They came and supported Nkrumah for this to happen. Nothing like this has happened anywhere, any continent on this earth. And we should take pride in that. And when particularly our brothers and sisters gained their independence in Tanzania, in Uganda, in Zambia, all over the place, Nkrumah will send a team of educationists, judges, police, whatever, to help them secure their independence and run their government. Some of them, he purchased embassies, buildings in London, US, for them to be able to manage their foreign affairs and have their embassies. This was a kind of crucial support that Ghana and Nkrumah gave. So this is our history. Then we gained our independence, and then we formed the Organization of African Unity, moving to Nkrumah's and Garvey's dream that Africa must be united. And of course, that didn't fit very well with the former colonial powers. They were doing everything that they could to reverse this. So the first chair of the Organization of African Unity was Emperor Haile Selassie. Then the second chair was Gamal Abdel Nasser of Egypt. Then the third chair was going to be the chairman, or the president was going to be Nkrumah in 1965. And that frightened the West, the Americans and the Europeans. For Nkrumah to be the chairman of the Organization of African Unity, this has to be stopped. So they did everything to prevent the OAU summit from being held in Accra. It was supposed to have been held in May 1965, but they undermined it, the Americans and all that. They got some African countries like Liberia, Nigeria, and others to undermine and also to call for some African heads of state to boycott the summit. So the summit could not take place because of these difficulties until late October 1965. At that time also, Nkrumah had completed a book called Neo-colonialism, the last stage of imperialism. Neo-colonialism is the last stage of imperialism. The pre-publication review of the book was said that it infuriated President Johnson of America and Harold Wilson of Britain, Prime Minister then. They warned Nkrumah not to publish that book. And if he did, he would face the consequences. Nkrumah published the book and circulated it to heads of states and dignitaries that visited Accra for the summit in 1965. So the Americans and the British, the French, the Germans, the Canadians, the Australians, the South Africans, they combined their intelligence and security and organized a coup d'etat and overthrew Nkrumah in February 1966. October, then in February 1966. And that period became a watershed for Africa. Africa has never recovered since Nkrumah's overthrow in 1966. Likewise, the same thing as Ghana. This is the background. And if you look at Africa now, it's been a backward slide. And difficulties all over. Look at South Africa, the confusion there. Look at Zimbabwe. They are giving the land back. Why? Look at Ghana, Senegal, Mali, everywhere. Angola. Angola pains me so much. Our brothers and sisters in Cuba, they shed their blood there to liberate Angola, only for the assimilados, the black-skinned white mass there, to give Angola back to the Americans. All the oil there, they're giving it to the Americans. Cubans sacrificed for nothing. And this is the story that we face all over. So the next steps in the Pan-African movement, it is the urgency of decolonization. The urgency of decolonization. We have to decolonize Africa. What we have to understand is this. Colonialism is an act of corruption and dehumanization. Colonialism, in order for colonialism to succeed, you have to abuse and corrupt the cultures, the value system, the sense of spirituality of the indigenous people. Everything about you is bad. You are savages. You are not human beings. You have to be civilized and created in the image of the European, a caricature of the European. So everything about you is bad. That is the essence of colonization and dominion. And that is what has happened to us. And we have to accept this. And the trauma of it all. So colonialism corrupted our sense of value, our sense of self-worth, our sense of spirituality. It made us to laugh at our own God. That is what colonialism turned us inside out. It's like in the US, they said that you're a black man, you ain't worth anything. If you're a black man, you are not worth anything. We say this as a colloquial term in the streets of the United States among ourselves. So that is what colonialism has done to us. So we undervalue ourselves. So colonialism is an act of abuse and corruption. They abuse our sense of humanity. We welcome them and traded with them, share things with them, but then they tricked us and captured us by force of arms and all that. So we have to understand what colonialism is and what it has done to us. And they also, through about 200, 300, 400 years of their presence here, they also bred a group of us who were like the house Negroes, house niggers, who will mimic their lives, serve them and all that. And this group, they became a force. And their children and others are now ruling all over Africa, particularly in Ghana. And it is through them that Africa has been recolonized. They continue to be the middlemen and women of the metropolis, that is the Europe, the Western powers, and now we are talking about China and all that. So that is what neocolonialism is. There's no longer the need for the white man to be present, physically dominating us in Africa. They've got their own people that they've trained and brainwashed and lobotomized over the years to be acting on their behalf. And this is what Frantz Fanon identified and classified as they have black skin, but they have white masks. And sometimes we say there are some coconut and all these things. But they are real because their loyalty is not to Mother Africa. Their loyalty still is to the European, in service of the European. So we have been abused and been corrupted. And this abuse and corruption, colonialism, was carefully done and planned by the Catholic Church through the doctrine of discovery. which was propounded by Pope Nicholas V. And in the 15th century. And this doctrine of discovery gave them power, giving the kings and queens of Portugal and Spain the power to go and conquer territories, non-European territories, and bring them under servitude and exploit their resources for the benefit of Europe. So this doctrine of discovery was what propelled the whole system of slavery, then enslavement, and then colonialism, then imperialism, which has manifested into Neocolonialism that faces us today. And you would have realized that in March, the current Pope, the Holy See, and the Vatican came out to repudiate the doctrine of discovery as inhuman and unfair. It's as a result of the original people of Canada, the Canadian indigenous people, the First Nations of Canada. They have been fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting, and eventually things came out that got exposed to such an extent that the Pope and the Vatican could do nothing but come and repudiate the doctrine of discovery. And this must not be lost on us. So it is real. What happened to us is real. And they have noticed that. And the whole issue of reparations has brought this to the fore. So thanks to Sister Osa, Esther, and the reparations movement, you've done very, very well. I salute you. I salute you all. And you have to continue with that struggle. It's part of the whole Pan-African struggle. So, decolonization is what faces us now, is the next step, is decolonization. We have to retrieve our sense of humanity, because of our sense of humanity has been abused and corrupted by colonization. And we have to humanize ourselves. In order to humanize ourselves, we have to consciously decolonize. And this is the theme that Ngugi wa Thiong'o of Kenya has been on it for a long time. The same thing like Sheikh Anta Diop, Chancellor Williams, Henrik Clark, Benjekanan, CLR James, all of them, Padmore. Yes, the issue of decolonization in order to restore our sense of humanity. Because colonization dehumanizes us. That is the truth. It dehumanizes people. I have been dehumanized. I've been spending almost about 60 years of my life fighting to humanize myself, to rid myself of mental enslavement. It's a difficult struggle. It's a difficult fight. Because it disturbs your sense of loyalty. When your sense of spirituality is taken away from you, your value system is taken away from you, then you are made disloyal. You don't know who you are. You cannot be loyal to yourself. You will become loyal to your slave master. When your slave master is sick, you are also sick. That is what we have been reduced to, and we have to fight back to restore our sense of humanity. So, the important thing that I see before us now is the question of education. Unfortunately, most of our educational systems are still modeled after European educational system. The British, French, Portuguese, and Spanish educational system, those who own those colonies in Africa. We haven't freed ourselves from that educational system. The same as the structures of the state, the laws, everything, the basis of it are all European and not African. And we have to go back. Sankofa, that is the theme of Black History Month. Sankofa, the Sankofa symbol, saying that retrieving the past is no taboo. That is what our ancestors told us. So we have to retrieve our sense of humanity, our sense of loyalty, and our sense of value systems. That is the challenge facing us. And education is key. So we have to consciously establish a Pan-African curriculum, designing curriculum in our own image and interest, in the sciences, in the social sciences, in technology, in mathematics, everything. That is the challenge facing us. And this has to be taken up by CARICOM and the African Union. And those of us in the diaspora, we have to push this. We have to push this very hard. If the diaspora is the sixth region of the African Union, this has to be pushed. Is the education. We have to change the educational system. And those of us in the diaspora, we have to take this lead because we live in the belly of Babylon. We live in Babylon. We know them. We understand what we are going through. More than those of us who happen to be born in Africa. So you can do so much. You know what has to be eliminated in our educational system in order for us to recover ourselves. So it rests on you that we develop the curriculum and propagate it across the Caribbean and Africa. Is very key, very, very important, so that we have instructions in the sciences that reflect our own image and industry. And this was what Nkrumah was about. He says that we have contributed to the world pool of knowledge from antiquity to the present. So we should not feel shy of delving into the whirlpool of knowledge to use what we can to develop and govern ourselves. Yes, in the Americas, particularly in the US, at a time it was illegal. We were banned to be taught to read and write. But at the same time, during that period, there were several inventions that our ancestors made in technology, in the textile industry, automobile industry, refrigeration, medicine, everything we did to propel the American Industrial Revolution. We did. And the slave master took the patents for them. So we have contributed. And if you go back centuries back, Pythagoras and all these Greek and Roman philosophers, scientists and all that, where were they educated? Not in Africa and in Egypt, in Memphis and other places. So that is what we are. And we have to retrieve it. And in the spirit of what Garvey said, that if we did it before, we can do it again. And that was what Nkrumah was about. So it is in the educational system has to be thoroughly changed. And this was what surprised me about Zimbabwe. And I thought that Zimbabwe, with President Mugabe, so educated, haven't been in Ghana, lived in Ghana, and seen the problems in Ghana, he would have attacked the issue of education foremost and changed the curriculum. If he had done that, the reversal would not have happened. So education is very, very, very important. Then I'll come to my last point. My last point is that we have reached a stage where we have to pick up from where Nkrumah left off in 1966. And why he wrote the book Neocolonialism, the last stage of imperialism. We have to bring colonialism to an end. And neocolonialism. Colonialism being driven by our own lobotomized or black-skinned, white-maxed Africans who are the present president that you see all over in South Africa, in the person of Ramaphosa, in Ghana, in person of President Nana-Addo, in Senegal, all over in Nigeria. You become president because of regime change. They kill our progressive leaders. They killed Nkrumah. They killed Sankara. They killed Maurice Bishop. On and on, Lumumba, and on. And these should not be lost on us at all. These should not be lost on us. And they send us back. And they install their own puppets. And this is where the state of Africa is now. So, in 1947, Nkrumah was prepared by the Pan-African community in Europe, based in UK. They met in Manchester in 1945 in October, and they prepared at the 5th Pan-African Congress for the liberation process. Now, we have to re-liberate Africa. And the responsibility lies very much on Africans in the diaspora. The responsibility lies very much in the hands and minds of the African in diaspora. In the same way as it happened in 1945, when Nkrumah was dispatched in 1947. Now we have more Nkrumahs, thousands and thousands of Nkrumahs, well educated, well trained, and understanding the ways and trickery and lies of the Europeans. So we will have to mobilize ourselves to go back and liberate Africa. It's our responsibility. It's your responsibility. It's my responsibility. We have to go back to liberate Africa. Africa is yours. Africa is yours. If you were born in the Caribbean, you were born here in France, in Germany, in the United States, Africa is your home. Africa is yours. I happen to be born in Ghana. Africa is not mine. It does not make me more of an African than you. And to tell you the truth, I will concede that most of you have a better appreciation and understanding of Africa than most of us who were born in Africa. That is the reality. You have cared to study. We take it for granted that we know, but we don't know. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this mess, being recolonized. It's very painful, but this is the reality. So you have a responsibility to organize yourselves and be concerned with the issue of power, of regime change. The West, the Europeans, the Americans, they see to it that they change regimes to satisfy their national interest. Where is your interest? You also have a responsibility to see to it that you organize yourselves, pool your intelligence and security and resources together to bring about regime changes in Africa that will serve our own Pan-African interest. It's your responsibility. It is my responsibility. It is our collective responsibility. That is the essence of decolonization. It is our collective responsibility. And it relates to power. We have to secure power. We have to be discussing power. Discussing among ourselves, studying the essence of power, of taking power, of winning power, of controlling power, of managing power, power. That should consume our lives. And that is what is meant by every day is African Liberation Day. We should make every day a conscious day of the agency of liberating Africa, because Africa has been recolonized. We have to organize ourselves, study and work together in our communities. That is the urgent task facing us now, the liberation of Africa, the second liberation of Africa. Ghana has to be liberated. Zimbabwe has to be liberated. South Africa has to be liberated. Angola has to be liberated. Nigeria has to be liberated. Mali, they are fighting. Senegal, they are fighting. Guinea, they are fighting. Burkina Faso, they are fighting. And it is our fight. Haiti is a Pan-African responsibility. We all have to contribute and fight to liberate Haiti. It's our responsibility. The same thing with the Congo. It's our responsibility. The richest territory in the whole planet has been seized by the Americans and the Europeans. That's why they had to kill Lumumba. So that is a challenge facing us. It's a time of liberation war again. We have to organize ourselves to liberate these Bantustans, these apartheid regimes. Yes, run now by Africans for the European and Western powers. Everything is channeled to support Europe. Can you imagine it? Can you imagine my own generation, my own age group, classmates? They are running Ghana now. Been running Ghana since 1982, when they organized a coup against an Nkrumah's government. My own colleagues. And when they came, the World Bank supported them. And they told them to divest the country of all the industrial, manufacturing, agricultural industries that Nkrumah had established. So they formed a divestiture implementation committee and sold out or left to rot in the bush all the industries, over 300 industries. We were manufacturing our own products, our own basic needs. But they destroyed everything. And by destroying that, they were creating a permanent state of unemployment, inflation, debt, poverty, and underdevelopment. And this was done by my own colleagues, friends. That is what we are in now. Now, Ghana, you hear, we are begging all over. Borrowing, because we are not producing what we need, as Nkrumah had established for us, because we destroyed it under the instructions of the World Bank and the IMF and the U.S. Treasury. We did. Those that they got to do the coup, organize the coup against Nkrumah, that's what they came to do. And this was continued in 1982 by the Rawlings regime. Yes. They destroyed all the industrial, manufacturing, and agricultural assets of the nation to make us dependable on imports. We were manufacturing our own car tires. We were manufacturing our own food and beverages. We were manufacturing our building materials, our industrial materials. We have plantations to feed ourselves. All these were destroyed. Now we are importing everything to the point of being the second largest consumer of canned tomatoes and tomato paste in the world. How can this be? How can this be? And we import about 70% of our protein needs, most frozen, dead chicken and fish. And we have sea there in the Atlantic Ocean. And they give licenses to Filipino, Spanish, Chinese fishermen to come and fish in our waters and take the catch away. And we import them. This is Neocolonialism. That is what Neocolonialism is. Ghana has become the largest producer of gold, but we get about 7% of the revenue generated from gold. We are producing oil, and we get less than 17% of the revenue. Recently, about 3-4 years ago, we discovered 3 large deposits of lithium. And this government, Nana Addo's government, Akufo-Addo's government, they gave that concession to a startup Australian company, and we are getting less than 7% of the total value. What is this? How can we do this to ourselves? And this is the leadership that we have. So these leaders, they are not Ghanaians, they are not Africans. We have to drive them out. They are a disgrace to you in the diaspora. We have to drive them out. They don't represent us. It's the same thing that is happening in the Caribbean, in Trinidad, in Guyana, all over. So we have to take lessons from what happened in Manchester in October 1945. It was a handful, not more than 20-25 Pan-Africanists, Africans of the Caribbean, of the continent, coming together and thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking and planning. And they implemented a plan. Why can't we do that now? Because we are more than the number they were in the 1940s. Now we are thousands. The only thing is we have to refocus and regain our sense of ourselves. That is why I introduced Black History Month in October 1987. You have to read the declaration, the African Jubilee Year Declaration. You have to get it and read it thoroughly and to understand it. I remember about 20 years ago, one councillor who was in Lambeth and who is now an MP, I'll mention the name, it's a white man, a Jew. He met me and he said, Addai, how were you able to get this African Jubilee Year and Black History Month to pass us? How were you able to do it? So we shouldn't take it for granted, because the African Jubilee Year, what happened was this. Please, I'll digress a little bit. It was a young boy. The mother was putting him to bed, and after prayers, as the mother was leaving the room, Marcus, 6-year-old, called the mother and said, Mom, come. The mother went back to him and he asked the mother, Mom, why can't I be white? The mom was devastated. Here is a child that she had deliberately named after Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And now the child was questioning his identity. She was devastated. We were working together then at the Greater London Council. She was a secretary to Ansel Wong, who was the principal race relations advisor of the Greater London Council. And he was my boss. I worked with him. And I went to work and I saw Elizabeth downcast, almost crying. I asked Elizabeth what had happened. And he said, will you believe it? Marcus has an identity problem. He asked me this morning, why can't he be white? And I told her, she said that I failed my son. I said, no, Elizabeth, you have not failed your son. It's the institutions of state the Inland London Educational Authority, the local authorities, the Department of Education, the local authorities, the national curriculum that has failed Marcus. So something had to be done. It was this that inspired me that something has to be done. We had to celebrate the contributions of Africans and people of African descent and Africa to world civilization from antiquity to the present, and especially to the development and growth of the United Kingdom and Europe. So we organized the GLC lectures and historical lectures and concerts. We brought in Ben Jekanan, Henry Clark, Francis Cress Wilson, and others, Tony Martin, Ben Jekanan. And we compiled these lectures into a book which we published, and Sir Wong and I edited as Our Story. I chose the title. It's Tales of Our Story. Our Story. It's not history. It's Our Story. That is the title of the book. So Black History Month was created for a purpose. Unfortunately, we have on the British calendar one whole month for us to think about ourselves, review the state of our presence every year, the month of October, to rediscover ourselves, sort out all differences, repackage ourselves, and face the following year. Then we gather again in October, review, examine ourselves, look at the state of Black Britain, and carry on. So October is a month of reflection, a month of self-examination to rediscover ourselves and package ourselves to deal with matters that are confronting us in the following year. Then we meet again to review and assess and plan again. That is the cycle. So October is an important station in our collective life as Africans in the diaspora. So the challenge that I'm putting before you now is that in every October, we have to be thinking about how we are going to liberate Africa. We have to think that if Nkrumah, Padmore, CLR James, and others could set something in motion like this in 1945, plan and carry it out, and send Nkrumah out in 1947 to execute that plan, and Nkrumah executed it to perfection, and within 10 years had driven the British out, and from 1957 to 1963, liberated 22 African countries. I'm repeating this for it to stick in our minds that we can do it if we organize ourselves, because we are better prepared and more resourced than the Nkrumah generation. We can do it. It is our lack of self-belief that is preventing us from doing it. CLR James, Padmore, Nkrumah and others, Jomo Kenyatta and others, Nyerere and others, they didn't lack self-belief. Garvey didn't lack self-belief. We go back to Dessalines, Bookman, Makandal, Toussaint Louverture, Nzinga, and all of them. We go back to them. Harriet Tubman, all of them. Yasantua, they didn't lack self-belief. That is who we are. We have to pick ourselves up again. Restore our sense of self-worth. as glorious Africans. The time is now. The time is now, and the challenge is to you, myself, and ourselves. Africa is ours. Let no one make you feel that you are not an African, that Africa doesn't belong to you. It belongs to you. By the mere fact that I happen to be born in a location called Ghana, that means I own Ghana. I mean, if I own Ghana, Ghana will not be in this mess. I will not be allowing people to come and take away our gold, our bauxite. We don't know the value. That is what colonialism has done to us. It has devalued us. Make us laugh at our own God. Emptied us of our sense of spirituality. Our value systems. Destroyed our loyalty system. Destroyed our loyalty system. We have to restore it. So please, you in the diaspora, Africa is yours. Let no one make you feel that you are not an African. Then it is your own problem. Lack of self-confidence. Don't let someone who is called he or himself or herself a Nigerian, a Senegalese, a Somalian, a South African, a Congolese, a Tanzanian, whatever, tell you that you are from the Caribbean, you are from Afro-British or whatever it is. Africa does not belong to them, to you. That is a lie. Don't take that lie. Africa belongs to you. It belongs to you as much as it belongs to me. Take it. We have to take Africa back. We have to take Africa back. It's ours. And that is the lesson of the 1945 Fifth Pan-African Congress to us. And this is what I leave you with. My sister, please, I hand over to you.
My elder, we thank you so, so much. Wow, wow, wow. That was a very deeply insightful journey of where we're coming from in terms of the African liberation struggle and where we need to go and what the important next steps are. As one of my listeners who messaged me to say he's listening keenly, rise up, Brother Calvina, has said, you have made it clear what needs to be done and what we need to do. And as you said, my elder, education is key, absolutely key. And as we know, you've outlined for us the courageousness of our ancestors, those freedom fighters that sacrificed their life, their entire life, working towards the liberation of the African continent. They could have been enjoying life. Some of them was barristers, solicitors, had great jobs, doctors. They had great jobs. They could have, just sat back and enjoyed their own personal life, but they looked around them and they saw the condition, the impoverishment and the dehumanization of us as a people and the abuse of us as a people, and they decided that they had to do something about it. And back then, if they wanted to get a message to Ghana, they'd have to get on a ship, and it might take them, 2 strongs instead of weeks, to get to Ghana. But they would go and Nkrumah himself, to get the message to his people on the ground, to mobilize the mind and the heart and the soul of the spirit of the people. He had to physically go around to the villages and the towns and the cities up and down the country. And here we are today with technology, and at the press of a button, we can access access the phone instantly of hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of people. You know, it's so much easier today. But what we are fighting against, that you made it clear, my elder, is that belief in self. They have been so successful through their education, through their mainstream media, through their magazines, and through their, BBC, world news shows. They have been so successful in convincing us as Africans that we have no self-worth, we have no history, we have, nothing that is of any significance that we can offer to the world. And so our people are so indoctrinated now and so believe in that narrative that they will look in the mirror, hate the image they see in the mirror, and kill their brother or their sister without fluttering an eyelid. So our work in terms of our ability to reach our people is so much easier, but the depth of the indoctrination and the brainwashing, and I forgot to mention as well, the religion as well that has indoctrinated our people. It's as if now we are a people whose mouths are sealed, whose ears are blocked, whose eyes are blind, and whose hands are behind their back. And we've got to now unshackle the hands, the eyes, the ears, and the mouth of our people. It's a job that we need to be doing. And as you said, my brother, we have got to do the works. We have got to be the ones who join forces with our brothers and sisters on the continent to do the work towards unshackling the mind, the spirit, the soul, the eyes, the ears, the mouth, and the hands of our people, so we can walk with pride and confidence and reclaim that which is ours and reclaim it in our right mind as well. In our right mind. Callers, I'm going to open the line so that you can interact for the next 30 minutes with our beloved brother. The number that you need to call in on is 0203 289 6504. That's 0203 289 6504. We welcome your calls. The lines are now open. We've got two callers on the line. Let's first of all go over to our beloved Brother Nusi. Welcome, Brother Nusi. How you doing?
Yeah, I am okay, Sister Shanice, and you? Yenge Lumbus Kiambote.
Yenge Lumbu Kiambote, my brother. Yenge. I come in peace and love. Mm-hmm.
Yes, coming in a spirit of peace, in order to build with yourself here as always, and our elder Addai Sebo. We thank the Galaxy management for the opportunity to be able to interact. Normally, I have a question to our elder, if I may. Obviously, I was born in 71. That's about 10 years after the assassination of Lumumba. Last year, I heard the elder speaking. This year, I am hearing him. Would the elder agree with the following proposition? In light with the assassination of the best that we had in the continent and outside in the Caribbean, because Marcus Garvey also was undermined, would it not be time for a change, analyzing the African liberation with a bit more reality? What I mean to say is, we have been left since 60s, 70s by the worst spirit that we can have at the helm of Africa. And I will focus as an example in the DRC, for instance. After Lumumba, we've had serious sellouts, and with the likes of Mobutu, and recently even quote-unquote non-sons of the land, killers by the way of Tutsi leadership. The young Kabila, so-called son of Kabila, was one. Therefore, generally speaking, Amil Cabral was assassinated in many other parts. The best of us, the African proper spirit got assassinated. Should we not change strategy and deal with what we have in front of us? I'll be very short in putting my question. In the DR Congo, for instance, now, since 1997, having a foreign leadership imposed on us by the West because we have been weakened by years of Mobutu, and before that, the Belgian, we are dying in our drove, 10 to 15 millions. We have a lot of treacherous mentality within the DRC developing because people want to sort themselves out. They want to live rather than just dying. And I mean this literally. The standard of living is very low. We have neighboring countries killing us, these 10, 15 millions. We will put that first before European at the door of our, nevertheless, brothers, but killers. Rwanda, Uganda, Burundi, and even parts of Tanzania, whilst the rest of Africa is watching us dying and calling it a rich country. Should we not change strategy? For instance, if you are happen to be born in DR Congo, what should you do to just exist? As in, life expectancy is less than 50 years because you were born there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brother Nusi. Let's go over to our beloved elder, Addai Sebo, and then we'll come to Brother Momo. Back to you for a response, please, my elder. Is it time to change strategy? You know, brothers killing brothers on the border. Mm-hmm.
Yes, the strategy was propounded by Nkrumah when he was in Guinea. In Guinea, Nkrumah and Cabral and Sekuturi, they used to meet and study together and review the state of Africa in the light of what has happened. It frightened the hell out of the French, the Americans, the British, the Germans, the Israelis, the Canadians, the Portuguese, for Nkrumah, Sekuturi, and Cabral to be conferring. So they tried even to assassinate Nkrumah, but Sekuturi, his intelligence was strong and they repelled it, and Cabral too. But eventually they got Cabral. As soon as Nkrumah died, they got Cabral and assassinated him. So out of that deliberation, Nkrumah came out with a publication called The Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, which outlines the strategy for us to take back Africa in our own image and interest. Everything is outlined there. We have to launch another liberation war. We have to liberate the territories. He classified the territories, those that have been liberated, those that have to be liberated, those that have been colonized. But now, if you cast your eyes across Africa, the whole of the continent has been recolonized. So the tactics and the methods and the instructions are in the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare. But what is sad is that the way that colonialism, through their education system, their imposed Judeo-Christian religion, including the Islamic faith. That is what I put together to call the Abrahamic faith. They have made us a little bit timid. We are afraid of the word revolution. We are scared of it. But when revolution comes, we're thinking about chaos and bloodshed. But we are in chaos and bloodshed. That is what the brother is talking about, the Congo and Haiti. We're in it already. So what should we be afraid of? If you want to smoothen our path, you cannot smoothen a rough surface with a smooth paper. You need a rough sandpaper to rub and smoothen and bring to shine a raw surface. You cannot avoid revolution because we are being killed and we are dying every day through biological warfare, through everything. We are under assault. We are under assault. So we should not be afraid of revolution, and this is what Nkrumah talks about in the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare. So the strategy is there, but some of us are timid and are afraid. We should go back to it and study it. This is what we should be doing. We should be forming, working and study groups together in our communities where we have found ourselves. We should be concerned ourselves with the issue of power, of taking power, taking back our continent by taking over power in these new colonial countries like Ghana, Nigeria, like Trinidad, like St. Vincent, like Grenada and all that. All these territories have to be liberated. And it's our responsibility to organize ourselves. And everything is in the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, my brother. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So that's clearly a book we all need to get hold of and we all need to study together. And, I'll certainly undertake to get a copy of that book. And let's do the works, family. Let's do the works. Let's welcome our brother Marmar, who's on the line. Welcome, brother Marmar. At the top of the hour, we will go into the Marmar University segment of the show. But thank you so much for calling in to this segment to, speak with, put a question to our beloved. Go ahead, my brother Marmar.
First of all, I would just like to, say hello to every brothers and sisters worldwide, and then also to our elder. For his messages and his, what he's talking about, etc. So what he's talking about is very, very close to my heart, and also what Brother Nosi is talking about. But I would like to take a different approach with regards to what both of them have said. I think basically, look, we're living in a different generation. Okay, frankly speaking, we must be realistic. Just like we must recognize that Africans, 99, that today, almost, let's say, something like 80% of Africans are deeply Christian. They're deeply following their religion. Hang on, I'm just coughing a little bit. Sorry. Yes, just turn away from that. Likewise, realistically, the vast majority of Africans, they're not going to go to battle. So we must be realistic. Yes? So that said, with that frame of mind then, we must look and see what approaches are going to work. So just like I said, even if I talk about my heart and African spirituality, I know in my own lifetime, even the lifetime after me, yes, we can make some inroads. But in my own lifetime, the vast majority are going to leave Islam or to leave Christianity. That's just a fact. Yeah? So, in terms of this, then, how can we move forward? So, I'll come back then to Brother Nosi. Again, he brings up his own country. Yes? It's very sad what's been going on in Congo, for decades and decades now. But what is going on in Congo, like I said to him, and I've said to many different times, it's no different to the situation that is in Cameroon, in Nigeria, in Mozambique, in Ethiopia, and so on and so on. Okay, now in Chad, in Burkina Faso, Mali, etc. Okay, so we must understand, with regards to the Great Lake region, yes, Uganda is not going anywhere. Museveni, he's been there for decades, and he's not going to go anywhere. Regardless of what you see, King of Kagame, he's not going to go anywhere. Okay? So my message is really simple. Okay? Just like in Cameroon, for example, people are calling themselves Anglophone and Francophone, etc. Yes? That mindset is not going to go anywhere. So you must work with what you've got. So the key thing, for example, for Cameroon, for example, now there's a civil war. The region where I'm from is in bloodshed. Yes? People have taken arms saying that they want to overthrow what they call the French government. Yes? Even though they don't look French, the national language may be French, but in all different regions of that, they have their ethnic groups which speak their own languages. But officially, the government speaks French. Yes? And conduct itself in language. But most people can even speak proper French anyway. Just like they cannot speak proper English. They speak what is called pidgin. Yes? Which is like a mixture of like bastardized English, and we mix with a few African words. Okay? So my point is that you must work with what you've got. So my approach is this then, regardless of what you think of Kagame, regardless of what you think of Museveni, yes, African people must come together to realize, to say, what is it we need to do to move forward? Okay? So, what Kagame is doing and what Museveni has done is no worse than the Congolese themselves. For example, Tshisekedi, the current president of Congo, who's been in power now for the next 4 years, they're coming to another election. But regardless of who they get, it will be the same approach. He's traveling to China. Okay? Why? Because he wants China to build roads and all sorts of stuff, supposedly for them. And they signed a contract with China over the past even a decade, and they've been looting Congo of all their minerals, as you know, coltan.
Oh, have we lost you there, my brother? I'm not hearing you just now. Brother Mama? Okay, apologies for that, family. Brother Mama seems to have dropped out. Let's go back to our beloved elder and ask him to comment and respond to the points that have been raised so far by our brother. These are new times. The majority of our people are either Arabized or Christianized and are timid and afraid on the one hand, but on the other hand, you know, he also spoke of some of the new, younger revolutionaries who did take back their country. They orchestrated a coup, got into the army, got the skills, got the techniques, the know-how, the ammunition, and organized a coup and have taken back their countries, supposedly for their people. Okay, I seem to have lost all my callers. I think there must have been a problem with Skype. It might be one of my shows on playback. So I just want to rise up and thank Brother Icon for that technical support there. So yeah, let everyone know that we are back and we are live and direct. Again, apologies for that interruption. I think we've got our elder Addai Sebo back. Wonderful, wonderful. Welcome back, my brother. Sincere apologies for that break in transmission. It was beyond my control. You delivered a phenomenal lecture, my brother, and we had the callers that were putting some questions to you, and then we got cut off. It was our brother Mama, and I think Brother Mama was saying that, you know, about 80% of our people on the continent are either Arabized ideologically or Christianized. And these religions have indoctrinated our people to the point where we are timid. We are frightened of dying, frightened of experiencing death, frightening of, you know, doing the works that need to be done. And, you know, On the other hand, though, we were also hearing of the bravery of some of our young people, like those in Burkina Faso and Mali, that went into the army, got the skills, knowledge and expertise that was needed, and then came back and took back their country, we think, for the people. So, there are revolutionary forces on the ground who are taking action. And, from my perspective, the revolutionary decolonization of the continent requires action on a multiplicity of levels, or at an educational level, at an arms level, ideological level, scientific level, etc., etc., etc. And we can see some progress in some quarters, no progress in others, and we can see, the potential in other areas. And so, my brother, I wonder if we can continue, if you're available, maybe up to the top of the hour, and then we'll bring in our brother who's going to take us into the Marmar University segment. And if we need more time, we could do a pre-recording, as we was discussing offline, and hopefully you'll be able to join us in 2 weeks' time, 2 Strong's time. But just for those who might be tuning in just now, who we may have lost, or for those who tuned in late and missed the first part of the show, it's an opportunity for you to give us a brief recap. I wonder if you'd be good enough to give us maybe a 10-minute recap, please, my elder, and then we'll open the lines for Q&A. Thank you so much.
Okay. We basically were trying to pick up from where Nkrumah, Padmore, CLR James and others, where they left off. And where they left off was what Nkrumah captured in a book called Neo-colonialism, the last stage of imperialism. And before the book came out, President Johnson of the United States of America and Prime Minister Harold Wilson of Great Britain had warned Nkrumah not to publish that book, because that book was exposed the workings of the colonial powers and the new form of colonialism that has replaced the old form of colonialism. And he explained that in detail with data and statistics. And he was warned not to publish and circulate the book or face the consequences. He did that in October 1965. Then in February 24th, 1966, the combined intelligence and security forces of the US, France, Britain, Germany, Canada, Australia, Israel, and South Africa used some Ghanaian soldiers and police officers to overthrow Nkrumah. And since then, it's been a watershed. And the main concern of the West, or the US and Europeans, was how Nkrumah was intervening in the Congo, in Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, and South Africa. Nkrumah was mobilizing an African army, a Pan-African army, to go and intervene in Rhodesia and prepare the ground also for assault on South Africa. And at the same time also, Nkrumah was pursuing a development plan whereby Ghana was going to assume total control of its financial sector, delink it from the sterling and the dollar. No single gold was going to go out of Ghana raw. We were going to create our own Fort Knox and control our own gold and resources. This did not sit very well with the imperial powers, so they came together and sabotaged Nkrumah. So Nkrumah was about decolonization, and we must continue with that challenge of decolonizing Africa. And we can do this through conscious adaptation of a philosophy and ideology of decolonization and development. They go hand in hand. Ideology and philosophy of decolonization and development, which is an advancement of the opinions and philosophies of Marcus Garvey. And we can do this through a purposeful education. We have to look at our whole curriculum and develop a Pan-African curriculum to suit our collective interests and image as Africans in all areas of national life, in all areas of academic instruction, be it in space science, neuroscience, technology, medicine, sociology, everything. We have to Africanize it and make it in our own interest. We have to look at the issue of language. Language should never be a barrier, should never be a problem. It has never been a barrier in Africans communicating with each other until the partitioning of Africa. I remember when I was growing up in the capital areas of Kumasi and Accra, you could find a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, 7, 8-year-old speaking not less than 3-4 languages. They will speak Hausa, they will speak Twi, they will speak Gan, they will speak Ewe, they will speak Dagbani, and all that. 4, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds. So we have the capacity to adapt and speak several languages. And it has been proven by some professors in Nigeria who teach maths and science in Yoruba. And they pass very, very well. So it is possible. So the issue of instruction in our own image and interest, developing a Pan-African curriculum which we should force the African Union and CARICOM to adopt. And we in the diaspora have a major role to play, because you are African in essence, because your consciousness is not shaped by the particular Bantustans or the neo-colonies we call Ghana, Nigeria, Togo, Cameroon, Congo, and all that was carved up in 1884-85 in Berlin. You belong to the boundaryless Africa. So your consciousness is African unity, African unification. So you are very, very important. And it is that consciousness that drove Marcus Garvey, that drove Malcolm X, that drove Maurice Bishop, and all of them. That consciousness also that drove Thomas Sankara, Lumumba, and all of them. So you in the diaspora, you, according to the African Union, represent the 6th region of Africa. So we have to organize ourselves and look at areas that we can make significant impact. And I think that area is the area of education. I know that in the U.S. and all that, people like Malanga, Karenga, Molosi Asante, and all of them, including Henry Clark, they all have written a lot, and a body of work has been done in the issue of Afrocentric studies and courses and all that. These have to come together, and we develop a Pan-African curriculum that should replace the curriculum across CARICOM and the African Union. It's a responsibility that we have to embark on, take it as our special duty and contribution to the cause of Pan-Africa. And the last thing that I want to summarize is the next steps. Also, we have to consciously think about taking Africa back. Africa is yours, is mine, is ours. We have to take it back. And we have to strategize and plan to take it back. It is not on this airwaves that we sit to describe strategies. But what I am appealing to you all is that you should not organize yourselves in your head and in your rooms and studies. You have to commune together as the Nkrumahs they did. Organize yourself in small units in your communities and challenge yourself with the problem and the issue of the seizure of power, the winning of power, regime change. The Western powers, they change regimes in Africa to suit their own purposes. Why shouldn't we do the same? And at the same time, we also have to look at the resources within our communities and look at the examples of Paul Robeson, Nina Simone, and others who contributed to the struggle against all odds. So our millionaire sports people, our millionaire footballers, athletes, and all tennis stars and all these musicians, these celebrities, how are we impacting them? With the example of Paul Robeson and others, so that they can also contribute toward the struggle. This is the challenge facing us, the issue of decolonization and development. We have to work to adopt a philosophy and ideology. And it's through that we'll be able to evolve the new conscious Pan-African that will know their obligation. We have to take Africa back. And no one else can do it for us but ourselves. That is a summary. Thank you.
We thank you so much, my elder. Thank you so much. We've got both our callers back on the line. We've got Brother Nusi and Brother Mama. You've just summarized for us there. You've given us, three of the many really important steps that we need to be taking to decolonize Africa and to continue with the liberation struggle. And firstly, that's the work around the ideological and philosophical decolonization of the mind, as that you said goes together hand in hand. Secondly, the really important job of developing a Pan-African curriculum and getting CARICOM and the AU to adopt that. And thirdly, very importantly, organising in our small units to take control, to win back Africa and to take control piece by piece, even if that means regime change. And so, trying to get our millionaires and billionaires involved is also critical. We need to look at how we can do that. Thank you so much. So as you said, without getting into the details, we've got some broad strategic goals there that we need to be working towards. Let's bring back Brother Marmor, who was interrupted there mid-flow of putting a question to our beloved elder. Welcome back, Brother Marmor.
Thank you, Sister Shanice. I'm happy that the show was able to come back. Yes. So I don't know how much of what I was saying earlier was heard. But there was two prone issues to my, you could say like it's opposing an issue, but also just a way of approaching. So basically, my message was really simple, really, two prongs. We must understand that we are living in a different age. Yes? We're not in the age of the 60s and the 70s and the liberation struggle that we were there. Even, for example, if we look at Black Power, if Black Power is going to come again, it's not going to be different like the Black Panthers that was there, because we're living in this new age and new people and new thinking and so on. So, Nkrumah, all of them, I love all of what they did, and I love all the struggles I'm saying. But what I was trying to say, just like I said about the religion, realistically, even if I try to push my heart, etc., and I recognize that's the African philosophy that will bring us up to, I know that realistic in my own lifetime, yes, people who are Christian, they will stay Christian. Then 95% of the people who are Muslim, they will stay Muslim. They're not going to leave that. That's just the reality. So likewise, the young people of today, whether they're young or mid-level, the vast majority, they're not going to go inside the bush to fight any guerrilla war and stuff like that. It's just the times. It's just the reality of the thing. They're not going to do that. So the key then is how can we bring Black consciousness, African consciousness to them? Yes, on the areas where they are. So one of the key things is the education system. Yes, China is coming to Africa today, and it's issuing that I'm getting people to like China. How are they doing it? They're doing it through the media. They're doing it to Confucius Institute that they built, university. Yes, they're building it through their films. They're doing it through their language. All right. So we have to be practical. We have to know what the people are going to be capable of doing and what they're not capable of doing. You understand? So if we waste too much time on trying to get them to do the stuff that they would not do, it's a waste of time. So on a practical level, then, with that understanding, I will come to the issue of Congo again. All right? The Congolese government, through the president, just signed a massive contract with China.
Leave the issue of Congo. You don't understand it. Thank you.
I will go to Cameroon. I do understand it. Okay.
Can you not interrupt? Thank you. You'll get an opportunity.
Brother.
All right.
Brother, I'm now 40. Okay. I've been following the issue of Congo for more than 24 years. I understand everything about Congo. There's nothing you're going to tell me about Congo that I do not know. And the issue with Congo is no different from my country, Cameroon. It's no different from all the other issues and so on. So I don't understand why you think Congo is unique. All right? So coming back to the issue then, I will not use Congo. I will use my country to illustrate the point I'm trying to make to you. Okay? In Cameroon now, the people who are calling themselves, yes, Anglophones. In other words, English speaking, that they are English. Yes? and then there's other ones who are calling themselves francophone. Yes, most of them can even speak proper French. Yes, but they have that issue of Congo and so on. All right, but is that said, they're fighting each other now, and millions have been displaced. You don't even hear it on the news. Yeah, millions have been displaced, and it's been like that now for almost 7 years. No white man is going to come to solve you that issue. Okay? What they have to do is to recognize that they must come together, whether they think of themselves Anglophone or Francophone or French or whatever, they must come together and then seek a solution. Just like, for example, the Tigrayan conflict, yes, in Ethiopia. Yes, it wasn't a different person who come from where to solve the solution there. The rebels had to come together with the government, and now they have a peace plan, and they're working to move Ethiopia forward. They're back now to doing their thing. Yes, it will take time to replace and so on. So my message is really simple then. We have to understand the reality that the certain governments that are there in power, whether they came through with the Western support and all the rest, they're not going anywhere. Okay? So that's why I'm with Dr. Arikana. The issues is not so much the government and so on, it's the people themselves. So it's not about changing one government here and there, because it will not change anything. Okay? Whoever comes to power is going to try and seek support from China or America or whatever. So nothing changes. So we must say that the solutions for Africa to come forward together. So wherever we are, wherever the governments are, and so on, it's about changing the mentality. So like if I talk today about certain things and so on, take on that new knowledge. So we must work with what we got and move forward like that. Okay? So
okay,
definitely.
You on that, my brother? Thank you so much. So the key, the solution you feel is getting through to the minds of our people is through education and and a new ideology. And it's not going to happen overnight. It definitely won't happen overnight. I think the first meeting of the African Union or the OAU was in 1900. They were planning it 1899. The first meeting was during the 1900s, and it wasn't until 1957 or so that Ghana got its independence. So, over 50 years of planning, organizing, strategizing, meeting, it definitely doesn't happen overnight. We're in for the long haul. Our history is evidence of the time it takes, for the whole wheel to turn. But as we know, kingdoms rise and kingdoms fall, and this kingdom is falling. We haven't even touched on, all of the externality and the external factors that are going on, like the war in Ukraine, the war against Russia, the economic war that's going on out there with the Arabs and the Chinese and some of the African countries on one hand against the American, and the fall of the dollar, the inevitable fall of the pound. There is a lot of externalities that are happening right now that, in my opinion, makes now a good time for us to be making some major moves. And we've just got to be clear about what those major moves are in our own mind, even without saying it, even if we understand it telepathically. And we move forward in that direction of travel together. Okay, we've just been joined by a new caller. So let me bring the new caller on the line, and then I will allow Elder Echabo to respond, and then we'll bring back Brother Nusi. Can everyone put their phone on mute, please? Thank you. Brother Nana Bonsu, welcome.
Yeah. Greetings in the name of the creating force of the universe, the omnipotent being that which is greater than ourselves. Was many names all of the Mare Nkulukulu, Omablafa Mungu Unieme Omadam for Mare, Chembe Ama, Ja Amanra Ashe, Timajilaro Kutu all of the Mare George Kaba. I wasn't going to ring in, my sister. Let me greet my brothers on the line and my sister. I'm working at the moment, decorating at the moment, and I'm sitting down and I'm decorating and I'm listening to the show and enjoying it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Any African who studies African history, African politics, can speak on any part of Africa if they have studied it. Our brothers and sisters, many of them in the Caribbean beyond and in the African world, know nothing about even the place they live. They're too busy trying to survive. There's so much disturbances that's happening in the various parts of our motherland and in the new African colonies that people don't have the time to sit down and philosophize. That happens in a period of calm or some type of calm. So our brothers and sisters and our children and our mothers in the Congo, northern Nigeria, Sudan, and elsewhere in the ghettos in South Africa and all the other places that we have problems, don't have times to philosophize the way we are. Because they're too busy worrying about being kidnapped, being raped, being murdered, to find money to feed themselves the next day. Basic things that we take granted for. Some of them name have internet to reggae. You understand? Light, running water, toilet. These are basic things that we take for granted. So we can sit down and we can come with all the philosophical and the ideological ways we need to do it. But it's how to transmit that to them. And here's the reason why I call. The elder spoke and I enjoyed his presentation. And our other brother came on, and he was on before, and I enjoyed his presentation before everything they cut off. But I even enjoyed the part that was cut off. You understand? Listening to Professor Smalls and Sis, and didn't get to hear your piece. You understand? So the show's been an enjoyable show. But then, brother, is it Brother Mau Mau came back, and he was commenting on the Congo. The other brother, I don't know why he felt that he had to tell him, don't talk about Congo. There lies the problem. There lies the problem. If those of us who claim, say, we're Africated, claim that we're fighting for Africa and the benefit of Africa, can't take another African commenting about where you are. Who are we to go and dictate to those who know nothing? How are we going to go to them and talk to them? If we, the so-called scholars or academics or researchers, whatever we want to call ourselves, is going to be arguing like that. You're going to go and tell another African he don't have no reason talking about Congo, but yet in the same sentence, the same presentation, you mentioned about the Berlin Conference, from November 1884 to February 1885. So you know that the era that you're talking is Congo wasn't Congo before that period. We know all about Leopold, the dirty boy there, and the Dutch them and all and sitting there, Belgium them. So why then would you have a problem with and if you knew your geographical position, you would know, was it him or was it Brother Mau Mau said, you got 5-year-olds that can speak about 4 or 5 different African languages. Communication with Africans was never a problem. You understand me? Because you got Hausa that live in Nigeria and Hausa that live in flipping Togo and all them different places because the kingdoms were different then. And the only reason why I rang up my Empress is because I think that put a stain on this beautiful conversation that was happening. Because I never really want to call, because when I got to add to it. Yeah, man, sometimes you want to listen and hear what I want and hear what people are saying. But if we as the people is trying to Africa, I'm not saying that we can't have conversational differences, because we're going to have them. But to say that another African can't talk about somewhere in Africa, it's just like saying, well, born in Africa, so what you do here? So what you doing in Gambia then? So you're not born there. You understand?
Understands, my brother. Yes, indeed. And that is something we're going to have to even strategize about how we work against, because, that there is that mindset where there is this kind of preciousness about the Berlin borders. And, some groups, I mean, say, for example, a Zimbabwean group, and they don't like anybody outside of Zimbabwe commenting on, you know, what we think Zimbabwe ought to do and ought not to do. And there's a lot happening there at the moment with moves to like give land back to Europeans, etc. There's South Africa, for example, that's precious about their colonial boundaries, you know, to the point where they will put a tire and burn, you know, shopkeepers from Nigeria and Cameroon and even the Congo and everywhere.
Destroy Ghanaian people's business and all the rest of it.
So when we talk about, you know, the need for a renewed mind of our people, you know, we're also going to have to think about, and so it's good that came up, because that is part of the reality check. You know, you go into an area and, you know, like in the Gambia, for example, you know, and there are, you know, a multiplicity of different kind of nations, the Mandinkas, the Jolloffs, the Seres, and we are like another tribe. The diaspora is seen as another tribe almost. You know, we are the ones, you know, who have that Pan-African perspective of Africa. We don't see those colonial boundaries. We see it in terms of the harm and the damage that it has done, and the fact that it was imposed on us, and it removed, you know, all the kingdom and empire boundaries that were basically, maybe to some extent, drawn around the different nations. You know, so from here in the Gambia through to Senegal, right through to Mali, even into Nigeria, you'll have, say, the Jollof tribe, the Jollof tribe, and the Wolof, and then the Mandinkas are probably spread from here, I don't know, say it spread southwards, you know.
Well, you got Mandinka in Gambia, you got Mandinka in Senegal, you got Wolof in Gambia, you got Wolof in Senegal.
All the way up.
You got Wolof people go around to
cuts
Sierra Leone.
across the French-speaking, the Anglophone and the Saxophone issue. Anglophone and Francophone issues. It cuts across all of that, because the music, for example, that they thoroughly enjoy here in the Gambia comes from Senegal in their language. Cuts across the French and the
I was watching
English.
I was watching a documentary on an African singer, and I think the two brothers on there will probably know I'm talking about. Her name was Miriam Makeba, and she came from South Africa, and she, at the time, this was in the 60s. She ended up marrying Kwame Ture, and had a child for him, and she was quite militant in the music she made, so she had to leave Azania, because it was under the white man rule, and all that was still under it there, but it was facially under their rule. And at that time, when Africa was going through its transition, every single African leader supported that woman. And Julius Nyerere was a big fan of her, and so was Mobutu, the traitor Mobutu. They were all, and Sankure and all them and they. You understand? And so she was able to add that kind of unifying thing amongst all these different African leaders who were striving for African independence. Do you understand me? Yeah? Right.
Music.
My point is this. A people that does not learn from the mistakes of their history is bound to make them again.
Absolutely.
It's not easy for us to work together. We've got different ideas. We've got a different view about. I got a view of how I think things should go, but it doesn't necessarily mean because I have that view, it's the correct way to do it. You understand? And if we're on air, we have to remember there are people that's listening that jumps on every word that people who bring on this platform says, because they're learning themselves. Somebody new could be learning, and something that you say, you could be that person that ignites the person who's going to make that change, because it's not necessarily going to be us. You understand? We're probably just the vehicle that the ancestors is using to get the real people who's going to make the change. You understand?
The
so
influencers.
I'm just appealing to my brothers. Yeah? Any African can speak on any part of Africa if they've done their due diligence. And if the brother makes a comment that you know but he's made a mistake, just say, well, brother, I hear what you're saying there, but you know when you said this is how it is. And then your brother can say, thank you for correcting me. None of us has got all the answers, but all of us got part of the answer.
Ashe, thank you so
much. That's all I want to say. I'm enjoying the show. Please don't disrupt my listening to the show, because I'm learning as well as, I'm listening and enjoying. So my brothers, remember what our primal objective is: the total liberation of our motherland and our people, spiritually, culturally, economically, psychologically, and Africatally. May the ancestors continue to watch over this show from Bliss Galaxy at fieldwith.net. In my heart Otep.
Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. Oh, thank you so much, Nana Bonsu. I'm going to bring in our elder to allow him to respond to the last caller, and also to my brother Mama. And then we've been joined by 2 new callers. I will bring in the new callers ahead of those that are on the line, so please bear with me, those who are on the line. Okay, my brother, my elder, can we hear back from you in response to this very sobering reality check that we're in right now?
Yeah, the reality check. Thank you very much, brother, for the reality check. And it's on course, and it was needed. And I appreciate your intervention. We have to be very patient with each other, because what faces us, the issue of Neocolonialism, colonization, is real. We suffer the trauma of it, and we have to accept it, and accept it in order to deal with it. I suffer from the trauma. Every day, I'm faced with the trauma of my identity, my language, my faith. I'm faced with it. And we have to find a way to deal with this, to deal with the spiritual corruption, to deal with the cultural corruption. Look, our situation has gotten so worse on the continent that you find lower class people, workers, hawkers in the streets with their children, speaking to them, trying to speak to their children in English. They have come to the realization, or to their realization, that they are placing their children at disadvantage if they do not bring them up in the English language, because English is the dominant force. And it's not English that you are teaching them, it's command, go, come, stop this, don't do this. They are not phrases. So the children that are coming up, they are caught in a bind. Some of them cannot speak their parent tongue, and they cannot speak the English well. And this is the reality that is going on in my part of the world called Ghana. And it is real. I have my own granddaughter who have 2 children. My wife is a speech and language therapist, and we are battling. With them, one is 3 years and the other is 5 years, the last ones. And when they go to school, it is written boldly, don't speak English. Speak only English. So the children follow what the teachers say, and when they come home, you speak to them in Twi, your language, and they respond to you in English. They will ask you and speak to you, ask you questions in English. And we are struggling. That is the reality facing us. And it is real. Our food and beverages, people are throwing away our mangoes, oranges, and others, and are taking Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and all these things, and eating pizza, and all that. Now we have 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds having strokes, hypertensions, and all the viral diseases coming because of adaptation of European values and systems in terms of our nutrition. It's serious, very, very, very serious, the attack. So the issue of decolonization that Ngugi wa Thiong'o and others have been talking and fighting about, and Bob Marley, is urgent. That is the task facing us now. Otherwise, we are losing the continent. Because we have become alienated from our motherland. So the land has no value to us. Just think about it. The vibrant, the most strong of the youth, they will take the risk of traveling across the Sahara, coming to the point of the Mediterranean in Northern Africa, and to cross in dinghy boats, some drowning, in order to reach Europe, to have a better life. This is real. Why should it be so? It's the mind. The mind. That was the first point of attack. And your language. Look at the slave ships. They separated them. And when they got to the land, they sold them apart. They broke families. You don't speak your language. And this is continuing with us. So please, the challenge facing us is real. And we need to adopt a philosophy and ideology for decolonization and development in our own image and interest. That is the challenge facing us.
Thank you.
And we should start now in our communities. We are good at it. We establish community support, education support schemes, Huey Andrews and all these people, in order to take the education of our children in our own hands. And this happened in the 60s and 70s. So we can go back to it in our communities. Mm-hmm. And organize ourselves and think about the whole issue of total liberation and unification. It is power. We have to concern ourselves with the issue of power, the capture of power, because that is what the West is concerned about. They change regimes to suit their purposes so that they can continue controlling power and directing things. Now, my brother mentioned about China and what they are doing there and everything. But China is a liberated colony from the French and the British assault and all that, the Opium Wars and all that, and 49, they liberated. And they have held on to that still. So it's a liberated territory. And it has a leadership structure that makes it possible to happen. But in Ghana, in Cameroon, in the Congo. We don't have a leadership structure that makes it happen. So what do? Who do we appeal to but ourselves? George Padmore, Nkrumah, CLR James, Jomo Kenyatta, Wally Johnson, and all of them, Moodley, and all of them. They didn't appeal to the British or the French or the Germans or the Americans to help them liberate. They sat down. As the brother said, in the diaspora, things that we take for granted in Africa is a matter of life and death. So they had the presence of mind here to think and plan, and executed a plan to the T. And now, my brother, look, Nkrumah, he traveled the length and breadth of the country to mobilize and organize the people and mobilize them in dinky cars and all that. He was able to do it. Now, with the modern communications and other things at our disposal, we can do far better than they did. That is the challenge facing us now. But the method is not different. It's a matter of organization, and Nkrumah said it, organization decides everything. And we have to organize and mobilize ourselves in our little communities everywhere that we are. But we have to be thinking about taking our Africa back into our own hands. Africa belongs where we have to take it back. And anyone who is a barrier, you have to know who that person is, that your enemy is. And that enemy may be the insect in your own clothes. You have to hunt that insect. And you should not let that insect to be stinking you and biting you and drawing your blood, transfusion to feed Europe. You have to cut it off. So Paul Biya in Cameroon is not an African. He's not African. The same thing with the one in the Congo, Brazzaville. He's not an African. In Senegal, in Ghana, they are not Africans because they are serving the purposes of the colonizers, of their colonial masters. So, my brothers and sisters, the challenge remains the same. What Marcus Garvey was driving at. Can you imagine how Marcus Garvey was tortured? The Americans had every reason why, and the British why they brought him here to the United Kingdom. He could go to Gibraltar and stand there and see Cuba and see Africa there, but they would never allow him to put his foot on the continent. What a torture. They knew what they were doing. For him to die here. They knew what they were doing. You see, so please, there was a time that it made it possible for people to make meaningful visits. Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, they all made meaningful visits to Africa. And Malcolm X came to Ghana, strategized with Nkrumah, and as soon as he got home, what did he do? He formed the Organization of Afro-American Unity, OAU. And not so soon they downed him and killed him. You see, so we have to take lessons from what has gone on before, because the exploitation and extraction of wealth and resources to impoverish Africa continues the same way. How come in 2023 you get deposits of lithium and you hand them over to an Australian company and you are taking only about 7% of the total revenue? that will come out of the exploitation of the precious mineral. How? And this is happening. It's happening in Zimbabwe, giving the land back. And oh my goodness, on top of it, compensate them. Is it not the same practice that they did to us, to Haiti? Is it not the same practice? They are killing our souls. And we are sitting here philosophizing and this and saying that this is my territory, Congo. You don't have to say anything about Congo because you are not from Congo. Or not say something from Cameroon because you are not from Cameroon. I'm not from Cameroon. I'm not a Ghanaian. I'm African who happened to be born in Ghana. I'm African who happened to be born in Trinidad. I'm African who happened to be born in Venezuela. I'm African who happened to be born in Brazil. I'm African who happened to be born in Russia. I'm African first. And Africa belongs to us. And we have to own it spiritually, materially, everything. And if we don't like what is happening, it's our responsibility to organize ourselves to change it. We have to concern ourselves with the issue of power. Power, because it's power. If you have power, you can do a lot. And in Nkrumah, Africa had power in Ghana. So he could summon other leaders to come to Ghana, Accra, to strategize. He could summon liberation movement freedom fighters from all over to come. He could set up liberation camps all across Ghana where they will come and train and strategize. And when they are tired and exhausted, they will come and they will have a place to rest and recoup their energies and go back and fight. And he will resource them. What lessons are we learning from this? And we say that, today our circumstances are different. It's a new generation. It's an insult. It's an insult for someone to say that to Nkrumah, CLR James and all that. What is the essence of dialectical materialism? They know that they were not going according to what Toussaint and others also use, the tactics that Toussaint and others use, or Harriet Tubman and all that. Things changes. Life changes, and we have to change also and adapt to circumstances. And what we are faced now with is the challenge of neocolonialism. And it is because of this and the exposure of this that Nkrumah was undermined and was overthrown. And he saw it. The Congo. Nkrumah used to say that the Congo is the heart of Africa. For us to sit down for the heart of Africa to be seized, that is the Congo. So he wrote the book, The Challenge of the Congo. Everyone should read that book. The Challenge of the Congo. Then also the Rhodesia Fire. It's because of these two countries that was Nkrumah was so concerned about, was mobilizing an African high command. And then they had to overthrow him. And since then, it's been a watershed, and we have to recover it. And we have to know this history. It's important that we know this history. Why is it that Dunkirk and Waterloo is celebrated in March? They mark celebrate their victories. But in Africa, there's victories over the British. We are scared to celebrate them because we don't want to step on the toes of our colonial masters. We defeated them. The Ashantis defeated them several times. But we don't want to celebrate. Queen Zinga we don't want to celebrate her, is forgotten because we'll be offending the Portuguese. That's the challenge facing us, and it is real. And a lot of our brothers in the diaspora have done tremendously well by rewriting our history and recording them. Now the challenge is all of those you who have influences, have brothers and sisters holding ministerial positions in the CARICOM, in the African Union, in their countries. Tell them the urgency of developing a Pan-African curriculum. All the materials are there. You just have to get a collection of scholars and put them together. They will put it together. And we have a Pan-African curriculum to guide us in the next phase of the liberation struggle. So it's the liberation of the mind. We must not be afraid of revolution and liberation struggle. That is what Garvey and Bob Marley sang about. Mighty Sparrow and all of them. My goodness. So liberation, we must not be afraid of the word's liberation of the mind, and physically too. We should not be afraid of it. That is a challenge facing us. We have to liberate Africa. Totally, politically, economically, spiritually, religiously, everything. We have to liberate Africa. That is the challenge facing us. And we must not be afraid of that. We must not shy away from it. The issue of revolution. Thank you very much.
We thank you very much, our esteemed elder, Addai, Akiaba Addai Sebo. We thank you so much, my elder. Okay, we've got a few callers on the line. Time is running and passing. We're 30 minutes away from the top of the hour. So I'm going to give each caller about 5 minutes each. And then we're going to wrap up the show for today. And we'll return to this topic during the first part of my show, maybe in 2 weeks' time, 2 Strong's time. Okay, because every day is African Liberation Day, and every day we need to be reminding ourselves of the works that we need to do and the steps that we need to take. And it may not look like it from where we are sitting, but we are winning. Change is happening. We are influencing minds, views, and opinions on a daily, on an hourly, on a minute-by-minute basis. Change is happening as we listen to each other, as we reason as a family, as our wonderful esteemed guests come and grace this wonderful platform, galaxyafiwi.net, we learn from each other and we take the learning back into our family, our homes, our communities, our Saturday schools and our organizations and wherever we are. And we share the learning, we share the information. I'm certainly going to be sharing some of this wonderful information that I've learned today about the next important steps in our liberation struggle. I'll be sharing it this evening live on the Sister Shanice Show. I've got some young Pan-Africanists who are my guests this evening on the Sister Shanice Show. It's going to be live on Zoom and live on YouTube, 8 p.m. UK time on my channel. Certainly hope that you will be joining us. One of my guests, is an aspiring leader, African leader as well, a young Pigbin from Kenya, an aspiring president. Yeah, we've got others with presidential potential. We're talking about a powerhouse of young people who have read Nkrumah, all his books, and are very well versed in what needs to be done to bring about the Africa that we want to see, an Africa that is totally decolonized. And we need to remember that it may not happen in our lifetime, but what we do today will sow the seeds for tomorrow. So if we want to see Africa change, then we've got to be doing that change today. Okay, so Certainly hope that you'll be joining us a little later today, 8 p.m. on a Sister Shanice show. You should be able to get me live on YouTube, internet permitting, etc. Okay, let's go around the board. I want to thank each of you for holding it, and as we, listen to our esteemed elder speak, I'm going to give each person 5 minutes, starting with our brother Julius, who's on the line. Welcome, brother Julius.
Rise up to the panel.
Rising up.
How to take a breathing, because I believe there was so much said. Right. One of the things, one first thing really is what you ended up, what you said, we might not see it in your lifetime. But you see, me, every day, I am seeing it happening. I see it in my vision. So I'm not even going to talk about my lifetime, because first of all, I know we Africans will never die. So this thing going to be in our life. We're going to see it happening, Sister Shanice.
Thanks for the correction. You're right. As Africans, we never die. We come back. So let's make the better place, the world a better place for when we come back. Thank you, Brother Julius.
That's it. That's it. We must be speaking in confidence, where there's no fear, there's no but, there's nothing in between. That's how everything manifests itself. Okay. And then, one other thing again I want to say, really, I remember when I was reading, and I come across this reading about the Congolese, and then how they were vibrant, and then you get these Portuguese and the European who went there and tried to destabilize everything they were doing as well. And then I got to a part again where I understand about the Cameroon as well, who it happened that the Europeans and these invaders trying to bring confusion between them, because I think Cameroon is closer to Congo. Yeah, right. So this is how they bring that kind of misunderstanding. So the reason why I'm bringing those 2 points is we have to know our black skin. We have to know our African skin. And when we are trying, especially we will come to know the history and begin to understand history, we must also develop our spiritual strength, where we begin to see an insight that, this is the way they did it, how they bring this divide and rule to us, and how they bring all this we will fight one another. You must be seeing these pictures in your stories when you're reading these kind of things where the brain acts and the brain begin to see a lot of things So I'm asking even our historians when you read, please, got to be feeling the spiritual, vibrant working inside you to be able to get a picture of everything that's happening around that causes all this disability. Because this deceiver, the deceptive man, it come, it deceive, it bring divide and rule. It make we now this one big Ghanaian that if I come from Sierra Leone maybe or Congo, I went inside to Ghana, it's like, Ghanaian won't rule, but they forget our black skin, right? And this black skin must be one of the first identity, which is the African skin and so on. That kind of spirit and power, we should have it within ourselves that we because when we talk about uniting Africa, I hope we're not even thinking about those who are hanging in the north there, Algeria and whatever it is, all these people who are hanging there, I will go and put them inside our African Union. Because there's a lot we have to cover, there's a lot we have to do to make Africa be this greatest Africa. Because we must think about our black skin. Anywhere in the world, even there was one place I went to in this country, and I saw the amount of Arabites, the one that women look at Arabites, is like these almost brown skin kind of people. They come and they are welcome them in this particular hotel. They were having celebration just like the white man and everything is there. But when it comes to the black skin, right, it's like they disregard us and so on. So we must try to welcome our black skin wherever we are as a black skin, not the Arab like thinking or whatever it is, we must stop this kind of thing. This is how we're going to liberate ourselves and know ourselves.
Thank you so much. Thank you so
and there was
so
not
much.
To say about,
Brother Julius, we're going to have to leave it there, but we will return to this topic. Absolutely. We've got to put ourselves first. Unless we value ourselves, we can't expect others to value us and to give us the value that we deserve. Thank you so much. Brother Naya, welcome. How are you doing?
It's very humid and warm. Yeah, it's very humid and warm in the Gambia, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason why I called now, I'm not going to take 5 minutes. I'm just going to, first of all, technical issues. I seem to be able to listen on Skype much better. I seem to be cutting off on the internet. So with your permission, I'd like to continue to listen on the Skype. But I want to rise up the esteemed elder, with his calmness and his wisdom. And I assume that he's from Ghana, because Ghanaian people speak with that kind of calmness. I'm not sure if he's from Ghana, but I assume he's from Ghana.
He happens to be born, it so happens that he was born in that part of the continent. But as we know, first and foremost, we are all Africans, one people. Mm-hmm. Right.
And that is my point why I called up. It was a point that Nana Kweku said, about the borders and the African memory. Now, I just want to take you to a quick thing. It's not going to be long. I was watching a documentary about this Tuba woman, this Wazungu woman, riding her motorbike through Africa, through the most dangerous place. So what struck me first was, like, I like motorbikes. I'm thinking, why this woman is riding through the most dangerous place in Africa? No one's troubling her. Plus, the fact that she's on a motorbike is very dangerous, right? But that wasn't the point. What she said to her audience now was like, do you know what? Her show was like, the title was, Can I Get a Stamp to Get Out of Gambia? So that's what made me watch the thing. Now, she was in Gambia and she said to her audience, right, she said to her audience, all of you put up a map of Gambia, right, and see how it is, right? And she showed them that Gambia is just a strip, the smallest country in Africa, surrounded by Senegal, right? So she explained to her audience now, she couldn't explain to her audience, she don't understand why this is the case, but we know why it's the case. So my point is that the Gambian people, when I ask a few Gambian people, would you want Gambia to connect back to Senegal and be one country? They're like, no, we are Gambians. We are Gambians. We got our own identity. So my point is that the memory of Africans, they are in the reality of now. They don't know anything else. Like, and I would advise anybody to look at the map of Gambia and look at Senegal. Can someone explain to me why is this small strip of Africa not integrated? And we know why, but I just wanted to make that point of the memory of. So with your permission, I'd like to continue listening online.
Yes, of course you can. Yes, of course you can. I'll be on until the top of the hour, and then you'll have to call back in to listen during the show of our next presenter, none other than our beloved brother Icon. Yeah, so you'll have to call back to listen.
Thank you.
That way as well. Okay, apologies to those who are experiencing technical difficulties. I can see that via Zeno, we've got listeners, in 6 countries around the world. We've got people listening in Ethiopia, Ghana, Gambia, all over the UK, America. So we've got listeners listening now in 7 different countries around the world, and we want to expand our listenership as well. So if you've got family and friends in other parts of the world, please do share the live stream link with them so that they can listen to us. Let's bring in Brother Akram, give you 5 minutes or thereabout. Brother Akram, welcome. Oh, Brother Akram's just left. I think he's accidentally disconnected himself. We'll bring him back when he comes back. Let's bring back our Brother Nuusi. Welcome back, Brother Nuusi.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sister Shanice. I think you would hear me, and I hope will be confirmed that every time I come on your show, mostly, I come in a spirit of peace and to build. Now, let us clear one or two things up here. Our young brother, I was born in 71 in Africa. Whether he accepted or not, I would address him as a young brother. It doesn't mean that I know more than him. This is what it is. You either know the culture or you do not, because I preceded him in existence. That's all it is. I did say, leave the issue of Congo alone as you do not understand it. Those were my words. Now, it got extrapolated into all sorts of issues, feuding between Cameroon and Congo. There is no feud between me personally and him. The brother has brought his contribution here, which I've recognized on your show here. However, we either are serious about what we're talking about or not. The example that he's been drawing, not just today, on several other shows on Wednesdays here about the Congo, are not on par with the reality. I won't go too long because this would be construed as some kind of personal vendetta. I do not know him. There's no personal vendetta. I will have the same stance towards people, if I see it fit, who are not in line with what is really happening. This in a bid to bring about what I would call, and it can be verified for those who are doubting, a truthful account of what is happening in the DR Congo. You hardly see me talking about the Congo. You have today, not made by me, two countries called Congo, Republic of Congo and Democratic Republic. It's not me, it's not Neo-C who's made. These are facts coming from the so-called Berlin Conference, which wasn't a Berlin Conference. Go to the annals of Berlin. You either know or you do not. It was called the Congo Basin Conference in Berlin. It's high time we either know or we do not know. I will sound arrogant. It's not that. Now, why did I say to the brother to leave the issue of Congo alone? We have here an elder who's mentioned Nkrumah, who has written a book in 1967, The Challenge of the Congo. If I was to put to you, why did he not write The Challenge of the Cameroon, The Challenge of Chad, The Challenge of Nigeria? There are so many countries in this mess created by European. You either know why he did it, or you could ask Ghanaians who are enlightened. The very same elder here mentioned Congo being at the heart of Africa. What does that mean, the heart of Africa? I don't want it to be at the heart of Africa. We are us people who happen to be born in that land, dying needlessly in our droves. We have about 15 foreign armies in that Congo. Does this happen in just any other parts of Congo? Of that mess called Africa? It does not. It's time we as we draw example, start understanding the reality. I will finish by saying the reality, which is tied to the reason why I said, we have those who have divided Africa in 54 parts being spiritually enlightened. I have said this here, creating a division in such a way that for you to try to reverse this, you will have to start by the main part. The heart pumps the blood. The heart pumps the blood. I don't make this, it's in biology. I haven't written the challenge of the Congo. So as we draw examples which are not quite tenable, Kagame, you could even spiritually, and it will be shown here, and even Museveni. I said, and I made this point before, the Kagame and Museveni are anti-Pan-Africanist. First and foremost, because their origins, if you go back to antiquity, were not quite from Africa Kemet. I made the point also, and I will end there. If you want to understand this solution of Africa and be a correct Pan-Africanist, you must understand that we have been invaded and we have offspring, descendants of those who are seeking to maintain the status quo. That ain't Neo-C. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, my brother. We will come back and give you more of an opportunity to share with us, from your perspective, what our understanding of the Congo ought to be. Okay, we will come back to that. Thank you for adhering to time. Let's bring in Brother Akram, who's back with us. Welcome back, Brother Akram. You just got 2 minutes now, and then I will need to give Brother Momo 2 minutes, and then I need to go back to our guest. So, Brother Akram, welcome.
And sorry about that, I pressed the wrong button. But as I said, I cannot remember the name of our esteemed guest there. He's brought so much wisdom to the platform, and you know, as I said, it resonates with a lot of things that I try pushing out there. And it's about the cooperative, it's about the Pan-Africanism. And I like the way he put it, because alongside the cooperative union, I also draw up what he was talking about, the schools, an idea for schools, because I realized, and this is over 10 years ago, that 12 years ago, that I realized that education is also a vital tool for changing the narrative. And I did. I will send it to you. I think I might have sent it to you before, but I will send it out again.
Yeah, please do. We do need to keep revisiting, you know, these plans and strategies that we have. And I just want to very quickly, see if I can very quickly just tell the story of Booker T. Washington. I was reading up on him as part of my Pan-African research studies, and he was talking about, most people know Booker T. Washington. He was the son of an enslaved African woman, and he himself grew up his early years in enslavement, slept on the floor on top of rags, and rose to someone who gave, advice to presidents in the end. But what he did when they were emancipated was that he set up a school. Yeah, and he started his school in a chicken pen. Yeah, that's where his school started, and it ended up with having thousands and thousands of hectares of land. And, you know, about 80% of the land was being farmed by the students. There's about 60 buildings on the land that had been built by the students, because it was a school that gave the children and the young people practical skills. And so, you know, they were trained in, housekeeping, construction, housing, and a whole range of things. But very importantly, what jumped out for me in his autobiography as I was reading it, when he arranged for the visit of the president to the school, they put on an exhibition. And what the exhibition was showing was the contrast between the old and the new that had been developed at the school. So on display on their floats, for example, that were drawn by horses and mules and oxen, he said on these floats, so for example, they exhibited the contrast between old methods, old ways of doing things, and new methods. And he gave some example, and he shared the old method of dairying in contrast to the new improved methods of dairying. He showed the old methods of tilling the soil in contrast to the new methods of tilling the soil. Old methods of cooking and housekeeping contrasted to new methods. His school was about embracing innovation. And I'm sure a lot of the innovation that their students actually came up with at that school helped to spark the Industrial Revolution. They, in every department across the school, it was about innovation, it was about industrialization, it was about mechanization, and it grew a huge reputation, well abroad, about the good work at the school that they were doing with the students. And all of those students, thousands of students went through the schools over the years, and everywhere those students went, they went with so much confidence, so many skills and so much talent. They were all leading, successful entrepreneurs, movers and shakers, and members of the community wherever they were. I didn't realize, all of what Booker T. Washington had done and the genius that he was, but he focused in the area of education. And as I said, his school started, in a chicken pen farm, farm pen. So we can start anywhere. Sometimes we think we need an elaborate building. Here it is. He said, it started in Tuskegee in a broken down shanty, an old hen house, without owning $1 worth of property. That's how he started, himself and one teacher, and they recruited 30 students. And he said at the time, now the institution, when he wrote this, owns 2,300 acres of land, 1,000 of which is under cultivation each year, entirely by student labour. They are now, he said, on the grounds, counting large and small, 66 buildings, and all except 4 of these have almost wholly been erected by the labour of their students. Now, I wish I'd read this 30 years ago, 40 years ago. I would have been so inspired. All my students that went through my academy that I used to run in those early years would have been putting their hands to labour, would have been erecting buildings, would have been taught. We would have been teaching them the latest methods in all these different trades. That is the Pan-African vision in terms of the school, I would argue, that we need to be looking at. A school that across all of the departments is looking at how we can industrialize, how we can embrace the new technologies, how we can rise up our children to become the industrialists, the men and women who are the thinkers and the brains and the creatives of tomorrow. So we're going to delve into that a bit more, family. Thank you for allowing me the time to bring that in, because I know I've got some other callers on the line, but I was just blown away from that. That was just a very brief synopsis from his autobiography. Let's bring back Brother Mama. Brother Mama, you got 2 minutes, my beloved.
Yes, thank you, Sister Sinead. So the time is very limited, so I'll get right straight to it. Mm-hmm. So with your permission, honestly, in future, please, maybe after this series on the Ethiopian thing and all the rest, maybe we can do a series on Congo, because I really feel that we need to bring the full story, because many people out there, you don't really know what's going on, and they, just like the years Sudan today, it's new to them. But I would like to do like whether 4 parts or whatever, to talk about the history from the colonialism to the modern times and to whatever, and then other people can have their opinion. So that's what I would like. The second part is that all we're talking about really with all these things, there's nothing new. So I've always said to you every time I come on this show, from Marcus Garvey to today, there's nothing really new that we're bringing. It's good that we're bringing the information, and but fundamentally there's nothing really new. What we lack today, what people have touched on, okay? Decolonization of the education system. So I'm an educator. This is why I take out Wednesdays to do this program, because I'm reaching people to educate them. My key thing is to education, okay? We need to decolonize the African mind, yes? So one of the things for Pan-Africanism to go anywhere is Black consciousness or African consciousness. The Black people around, African people around the world, they do not have African consciousness. For example, this is why they bleach. This is why they respect whites and all the rest, etc. We need to do something to fix that. So one of the things to do to fix that is that you need the education itself and so on. So this is why on my show today, what I was meant to do was to do things about like Ethiopia, Somalia, and so on, so that I can educate people about who these people are and what's going on, etc. Yeah, so that's my main passion. But fundamentally, before anything that we can go anyway, we need consciousness of the people. Black consciousness, as Stephen Biko used to say. So you can expand it to say and today and say Black African consciousness. Without that, nothing will ever happen. So I've actually established a charity as well that is called Black African Beauty. I'm not actually mentioned it in the mainstream yet so far. I've just been doing with people and so on. But Sister Sinead, you've heard about it. But in future, I will bring more out to see on it. So that's how some of the things we're taking. As you all know, I'm a member, a founding member of Rapid Africa Plan. So that's another thing as well that we'll bring back in future.
Thank you. We're going to bring you back, my brother.
It's education.
Education. Got to leave it there, my brother Mama. My sincere apologies. We look forward to you joining us next strong. Can everyone put their phone on mute, please? Just allow me to bring back our beloved Elder. Elder Ekshaba Adesebo. We thank you so much. Everyone else, put your phone on mute, please. Thank you, Akram. Thank you, Brother Julius. Thank you, everybody. My elder.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you all very much. Please, if you are doing anything on the Congo, do it together with Haiti. that we cannot talk about Congo without talking about Haiti. So it has to be twinned. And the issue of Haiti has to be brought to the forefront of every African on the continent. Haiti, the significance of Haiti to us is what is deliberately being bastardized and dehumanized. Haiti, as you know, defeated the Spanish, the Portuguese, the Americans, the French thrice, the British, and they had to show them a lesson that you dare not challenge our power. This is what happens to you. It is the same thing with the Congo. It is the same thing with Ghana now. What Ghana meant to Pan-Africa has been reduced to rebels. So we must always discuss the Congo and Haiti together. That is my appeal to Brother Maumau and others, if you give them the space on Galaxy.
Thank you so much. We're 2 minutes away from the top of the hour. I hate to interrupt, my elder, but I'm now out of time. I've only got time to thank you from the bottom of all of our hearts for the time that you have taken to enlighten us and to illuminate on the issues that you've touched on today. What an interesting lecture and presentation from our elder who spoke to us in the first part of the show prior to the interruption and gave us a very in-depth analysis with solutions as well, you know. So it wasn't just looking at the challenges and the problems, but also, very importantly, he gave us solutions. Education, absolutely key. We've all got a role to play in that. That's what we've been doing here on the Big G Galaxy Afiwi for the last 30 plus years. We've got to come up with new and innovative ways of rolling out a Pan-African curriculum to even our brothers and sisters on the African continent. We might make the assumption that they know who they are because they're on the African continent, but they have been so influenced and colonized through the Christianized and the Arabized education systems. We've got to get Pan-African education happening even on the continent. We've got to change the ideology and the philosophical mindset of our brothers and sisters, as our brother Addai Sebo reminded us. Also, very important.
My sister, give me a minute here, please.
I'm over my time now. 30 seconds. 30 seconds.
Yes, please. Can you imagine that in Ghana today, as I speak to you, not a single book of Nkrumah is a required text in the national curriculum?
What does that say? We've got to leave it there.
From the secondary school, primary school to the universities, not a single book of Nkrumah.
It's a crime against Pan-Africanism. We're going to continue with this conversation. Thank you so much to all the listeners. Got to leave it there now. Handing over to our beloved brother icon. Sister Shanice, out of here.
Galaxy Radio.
Thank you, everybody. I'm going to shut down Skype now and hand over. Thank you so much. Thank you, family. Thank you. More love. All being well. See you later this evening.
And we shall create another in the future.
Over to Brother Icon.